Oh. Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. The central philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita characterizes in many ways the central theme of Hinduism, even in today's context. It contains the message of divine-centered living based upon right knowledge, faith, devotion, self-surrender, detachment, and disappoint performance of task as opposed to the ego-centered living, which is characterized by incessant striving, self-centered thinking, egoism, and suffering arising out of non-attachment of desires or union with the undesired objects or separations from the desired objects. The book is a discourse of immense spiritual value for people who are engaged in the daily battles of life. Symbolically or even truly reflected by the episode of Arjuna, who was stricken with sorrow and confusion, being taught and assisted by God Himself. In the middle of the battlefield of Kurukshetra, where good and evil forces stood in confrontation with each other. The Bhagavad Gita contains 18 chapters and 700 verses, which are attributed to the four principal of participants of the narration. In order to get the most from the text, it's important to understand what each character represents. Let's understand Arjuna. He is in human form with all our doubts, worries, and habits. He represents you and I as we stand on the battlefield of our life, facing all the different parts of ourselves that prevent us from realizing our true nature. Krishna, he represents the higher self or divine. The Pandavas, they represent the great virtues within us. The Kauravas represents the opposing force within us. The chariot represents our physical body. The horses represents our five senses that need to be guided by the self so we can realize our true nature. The five senses are the senses of sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing, and these, in contact with their objects of perception, give rise to sensation of happiness and distress. None of these sensations are permanent. Let's now read out the first verse of the first chapter. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharma kshetra kurukshetra samaveta yu sapaha mamaka pandava sachava kima kurvata sanjaya. What it means? It means Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjay, after gathering on the holy field of Kurukshetra and desiring to fight, what did my sons and sons of Pandu do? The first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is called Arjun Vishad Yoga, which means Arjuna's despair yoga. It sets the scene for the rest of the Gita by introducing the characters, the conflicts, and the philosophical questions that will be explored. The chapter begins with Dhritarashtra, the blind king of the Kauravas, asking his charioteer Sanjaya to describe the events on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Sanjaya, who has been granted a divine vision by the sage Vyasya, is able to see everything that is happening on the battlefield, even though he is not physically present there. Sanjaya describes the two armies arrayed against each other, and then he turns to Arjuna, the Pandava prince who is about to lead his army into the battle. Arjuna is filled with grief and despair when he sees that his opponents include his own relatives, teachers, friends, and brothers. He refuses to fight, arguing that it would be wrong to kill his own kin. Krishna, Arjuna's charioteer and the supreme being in disguise, tries to persuade Arjuna to fight. He argues that it is Arjuna's dharma or duty to fight in this war. He also explains that the body is simply a temporary vehicle for the soul and that the death is not the end of existence. Arjuna is eventually persuaded by Krishna's argument and he agrees to fight in the war. However, the first chapter of the Gita leaves us with a number of important questions unanswered. The questions like what is the nature of dharma, what is the relationship between the soul and the body, and what is the meaning of death. These are just some of the questions that the Bhagavad Gita will explore in the chapters that follow. The first chapter sets the stage for the rest of the Gita by introducing these important themes, and it also provides a glimpse of the profound insights that Krishna will share with Arjuna. The two armies had gathered on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, well prepared to fight a war that was inevitable. Still, in this verse, King Dhritarashtra asked Sanjay what his sons and his brother Pandu's sons were doing on the battlefield. It was apparent that they would fight. Then why did he ask such a question? The blind king Dhritarashtra's fondness for his own sons had clouded his spiritual wisdom and deviated him from the path of the virtue. He had usurped the kingdom of Hastinapur from the rightful heirs, the Pandavas, sons of his brother Pandu. Feeling guilty of the injustice he had done towards his nephews, his conscience worried him about the outcome of this battle. The words dharma or kshetra, the land of dharma, virtuous conduct, used by the Dhritarashtra repeat the dilemma he was experiencing. Kurukshetra is described as Kurukshetram Deva Yajanam in the Satapat Brahmam. The Vedic textbook details rituals of it. It means Kurukshetra is the sacrificial arena of the celestial gods. Hence, it was regarded as the sacred land that nourished the dharma. Dhritarashtra feared that the holy land might influence the minds of his sons. If it aroused the faculty of discrimination, they might turn away from killing their cousins and negotiate a truce. A peaceful settlement meant that the Pandavas would continue being a hindrance for them. He felt great displeasure at these kind of possibilities. Instead, preferred that this war transpires. He was uncertain of the consequences of the war, yet desired to determine the fate of his sons. Therefore, he asked Sanjay about the activities of the two armies on the battleground. With this, we conclude the chapter 1 verse 1 subject. Here are some of the key takeaways from the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. The root cause of all the sorrow and suffering in this world is our inability to deal with the conflict. The body is simply a temporary vehicle for the soul, and the death is not the end of the existence. Dharma is our duty, and it is important to fulfill our dharma, even if it means doing things that we do not want to do. We should not let our emotions cloud our judgment, and we should always act with wisdom and compassion. The Bhagavad Gita is a profound philosophical text that can help us to understand the meaning of life and the nature of reality. I hope this helps, and again, thanks for being part of this video and part of this journey. Namaste.